You're sitting in a reserved section, old man. You need to move before someone licks you. The sharply dressed guest didn't just speak, he performed it, voice dripping with arrogance as he leaned back in his chair. His laughter was the cue, and soon ripples of chuckles spread across the long banquet hall lined with chandeliers and polished silverware. The gala carried on, the clink of wine glasses, the drone of small talk, but at table 9, the air turned heavy. The target of the insult, an elderly man with a slouched frame, sat quietly. His jacket, faded and threadbare, bore the outline of a once sharp uniform. The colors had dulled with time, but the way he wore it, with buttoned precision, spoke volumes. His cap, resting low on his brow, looked as though it had marched through jungles, deserts, and storms. He didn't respond. His shaking hands merely reached for the butter knife, as if deaf to the ridicule. But the silence at his table drew more eyes. A woman leaned toward her companion and whispered, "He probably wandered in by mistake." Another man scoffed, "Looks like something from a surplus store." "Wrong party, Grandpa." Nearby officers, dressed in crisp blues and adorned with medals, glanced with thinly veiled annoyance. One of them, younger, full of self-importance, leaned forward. "You heard him. Move before you embarrass yourself." Chairs squeaked. Guests shifted uncomfortably. What began as a cruel joke was starting to sour the evening. And then, for the first time, the old man moved. Slowly, painfully, he rose from his chair. His back cracked faintly as he straightened to his full height. He took a long, steadying breath before turning his head toward the table of mockers. His eyes, cloudy with age, locked on them. And behind the cloudiness, there was something else. Something sharp. Cold. Unmistakable. The laughter stopped. It began with the sound of chairs scraping the floor. Not at table 9, but 3 tables away. 7 men, massive, broad-shouldered, cut from iron, stood up in unison. They wore navy blue shirts, each bearing the trident insignia of the SEALs. Their presence alone demanded attention. The hall, buzzing only seconds earlier, quieted. But it wasn't their size, or their reputation, that froze the room. It was who they were looking at. Every single one of them was standing at attention. Their eyes weren't on the admirals or the politicians. They were locked on the frail old man in the faded jacket. One of the SEALs, younger but already scarred with the weight of war, stepped forward. His voice broke the silence, not loud, not showy, but steady with respect. "Permission to address you properly, Master Chief." The title hit the room like a shockwave. Glasses were lowered. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Someone audibly gasped. The men at table 9 blinked in confusion, their earlier arrogance draining fast as realization set in. These weren't just soldiers giving courtesy. This was reverence. This was recognition. The SEAL who spoke snapped his hand up in a sharp salute. And as though bound by invisible command, the other 6 followed. The whispers began. "Master Chief. No, it can't be him, he's just a myth. That's the Ghost of Kandahar." The stories flooded back, hushed tales told in barracks, and after-action tents, and bars when the whiskey ran deep. Of a man who trained Tier 1 operators to their breaking point and beyond. Of missions that never made the news, but saved nations. Of a leader who carried men through hell and brought them home, even when wounded himself. One SEAL's voice cracked as he stepped closer. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. He pulled me out of fire 3 clicks deep with shrapnel in his leg." Another spoke, eyes locked on the old man with quiet reverence. "He taught us what it means to earn our trident." The guests who had mocked him moments earlier shifted in their seats, shame coloring their faces. The room had turned. The frail figure at the center wasn't just some lost veteran. He was the foundation of warriors. And now, the strongest men in the room stood around him, not as protectors, but as sons honoring a father. The commander of the Gala hurried forward, face red with embarrassment. "Master Chief, sir, we had no idea." But the old man raised a hand. The room fell silent instantly. His voice was gravelly, aged by smoke and sand, but each word carried a weight that bent the air. "I didn't come here for applause. I came for the ones who didn't make it back. The ones not invited to dinners like this. The ones who gave everything and asked for nothing." The word struck like thunder. For a moment, the entire banquet hall froze. Then, as though carried by one unseen current, men and women across the hall rose to their feet. Generals, captains, contractors, politicians. Some saluted. Others bowed their heads. A few, hardened soldiers with medals on their chests, wiped away tears they didn't bother hiding. At table 9, no one laughed anymore. The men who once taunted him stared at their hands, wishing they could disappear. Their arrogance had evaporated, drowned beneath the weight of respect. The seals closed in tighter, forming a semicircle, not a wall to shield him, but a line of devotion. Not protection, but tribute. The old man lowered himself back into his chair, slow and deliberate. His hand still trembled, but his presence filled the hall with a gravity no ribbon or speech could rival. He didn't need to say more. After that night, no one remembered the gala speeches or decorations. They didn't remember the donors or the politics. They remembered the silence that followed his words. They remembered the salute of 7 seals. They remembered the moment the frail old man reminded everyone that true strength is quiet, and true honor doesn't age. And in whispers, even weeks later, they still called him the Ghost of Kandahar.